Destiny speedrunning has a lot of comparisons to the world of sports, yet nobody here wears a uniform to play. There are no officials on the sides telling us what we can and cannot do. There are no contracts the players have to abide by. And because there is so little incentive to all of this, the players can very easily come and go. Just about all the players of the previous generation are still alive and well. They just got older and had responsibilities that superseded anything Destiny 1 could offer. Some were able to turn their talents into incredible gaming careers, but for the other 99% of us, we hang up the headset and controller with no fanfare. No parading through the streets, no billboard on your hometown proclaiming that that's where you came from. It ends all at once, and that end might happen before you know it. At some point, you will have slain your last acolyte, deposited your last Death Singer's power, and run your last brand, but until then, you get to live the almost dystopian world that this game takes place in, and there's no greater world outside it. This seemingly happens when it comes to the rivalry of Sunbreaker and Fellwinter. Atomic and Twooziee will rejoin forces, not necessarily out of a unification or friendship, but because there are so few people at the record tier of speedrunning. It was an incredible thing we had there, and now some twerp from nowhere Minnesota is going to come along to mess up all of it. I miss it dearly. Of the forced and unasked for sports connections that exist in Destiny, the one that definitely works is a sense of generations replacing the previous ones as they retire. This is a hard thing for players to accept sometimes, just ask me. But a changing of the guard always happens, whether it be Tfue and Redeem, or Cruelty and Redeem. One day the Sunbreaker and Fellwinter runners of 2020 will join this group of retired raiders. All we have to do is sit back and see who the next man up is. We introduce our next record as we introduce our next legend to King's Fall. While many share the title of King's Fall record holder, none will share the title this man holds for his sheer King's Fall greatness. He will be talented, he will be versatile, and expertly creative. You know him as Ontov. For this video though, he is simply Taco. Taco is not quite in his peak form. I'll let you know when we get there. For now, he's a top 5 King's Fall player in the world and the first person to take over Twoozie's title as the hunter for the world record King's Fall team. I wish I could show you this to back up my point that Taco is as good as advertised, but again, we are without video, so instead, we will talk about the new faces. Lobsta, like the 5 other players in this team, is a Hall of Fame Destiny raider, though mostly known for his Vault of Glass ability. Crabsy is a PlayStation player who is mostly a fill-in while Danger took a break from Destiny, and while nobody could truly replace the production that DD brought, he's another great player at the peak of his powers. Last of the new faces is Z Rear. We talked about Twoozie being the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of Destiny in episode 3, and now we have met our Michael Jordan. Wayne Gretzky, Babe Ruth, whoever your GOAT is, that's fine, but this is ours. Rear is like Danger in how he conceivably deserves a character to himself, as the true face of speedrunning for the next couple years, but like with Danger, he is simply outshined by a prime Taco in his wheelhouse. I promise it will all make sense later down the road when it becomes clear that Taco is second to none in this raid. The theme of this era when it comes to the gameplay will be micro-discoveries and strategy to slowly whittle away at both the world record and at our theoretical limit. The first of these is a slightly new way to do relics. Again, no gameplay, so just gonna go back to the map for this one. We are able to consistently generate enough orbs to get a person a super by 4th relic, so park glitching left 4th allows us to shave off a few seconds there. They can then rebuild a super with the extra orbs in the middle to get 6th relic. Having an extra person in the middle, which means no more double covers for all of the left side, which is more than worth for a net save. This is the main thing that Crabsy brought to the team because it's the way PlayStation had been doing relics in their record attempts. Wait, record attempts?
PlayStation? Like the console? Didn't we spend literally the entirety of 2020 running laps around Kavik, Gerwin, and other? Okay, that's unfair. But in any case, it's a pretty out-of-nowhere record though if you are viewing in 2021. Though I'd wager that a solid chunk of you watched the top 100 videos, whether it was your own segment or as an independent viewer, and the entire team would go on to be recognized as all-time greats of Destiny. Camhammer, there's a baseball reference, still had a good chunk of his career ahead of him, but still shined in the roles he was assigned. Grisella falls in a similar category, having his best times ahead of him. Crabsy gets his 2nd straight record and arguably was the best player on the team, though I would give that to T-R-. Tristan is genuinely the first player to look at Twooziee and Atom as a hunter on equal, if not superior, footing. Kavik was the most established raider of them, though it is his first Kingsfall record, as most of his previous accolades came in Vault of Glass. And Gerwin 454 is back, making this PlayStation history because this is, believe it or not, the first time that a PlayStation player has obtained multiple Kings records on the console. It won't be the last, but if you're following along, yeah, it's down the line, but I'm more interested in this detail. No lines at this spot because, yes, none of these guys are going to be critical characters to the future. Even T-Dash, who has a real shot at the title of Greatest Kingsfall Hunter, if Twooziee didn't have 9 Kings records thus far. Don't worry, PlayStation, your champions are out there, and we will get there. For now, though, we have a video for a full dissection of newer strats. We can see now visually the new rotations in use with Grisella, more on him later, rolling out with Camhammer to left side, but T-Dash comes in from middle to do the 4th part glitch, with side rotations being pretty much the same until 5th, where Grisella picks up 5th and Crabsy switches over to cover left and Gerwin finishes off the side. It's a lot harder to explain how it works in writing, but it's mostly a strategy you get down through playing. Besides, you will be figuring out something new here soon. Ships is the same in execution, but instead they have Gerwin attempting a Gerwin. A modern Gerwin slide is a double bellicose slide attempted from off the second ship, resetting your jump on a ship in the distance to fly further ahead with more momentum. Gerwin doesn't stick it here, ironic, but it is a hard technique, and Crabsy hits a standard double bellicose, so we move on to totems. We have gone away from the War Priest Orb Gen Tech because of the only modest improvements it brings in favor of 100% certain success of brand transfers, and for something we will mention at the end. War Priest isn't great looking at Crabsy's slow reload, but still good enough to maintain pace. And that's in spite of Cam using a Stolen Will for DPS. Our next big piece of tech comes after a solid Golgoroth kill. Camhammer does a Sun Charge transition warp where he doesn't re-enter the playing area until already behind the door. Once again, we find some useful tech, first theorized by Okale and Sermia, that was shot down by Atomic. What else is new? The benefits to this is no longer relying on the inconsistent boop tech to get loads of distance that is a guaranteed loss if messed up at all, as seen in the 2358. After a bad Daughters from only having one Celestial to work with, and a standard Oryx, those solid kills of the Shade courtesy of T-Dash, PlayStation celebrates a well-earned and well-overdue world record. A world record acquired completely by accident. Yeah, despite the legendary team put together, this was a run to simply get Kavik a sub 24 minute time. So it kind of explains the lack of total effort on encounters like totems. In any case, after a staggering 680 days, the record is back on PlayStation. Perhaps we can finally see the birth of the console rivalry we have always wanted. Xbox still has arguably the 4 best Kingsfall players currently in the game, and now PlayStation has shown that those 4 are indeed mortal. We can see these two titans clash for months, even in years to come. Xbox takes the record back 9 days later and set 3 more within a week. PlayStation will not hold Kingsfall world record for another 17 months. These next 4 records are basically all the same mesh of improved execution, and not worth looking into, which is exceptionally strange considering how we are pushing to the next minute barrier break. Just a year ago, we said that mid-2330 was as far as Kingsfall would go, and we are almost getting to the 22-minute range. But before we get to that, we have to talk about 2 players who each got their first taste of Kingsfall glory. Danger had returned from his break and easily took up a spot on the team. Twooziee was of course there, just as good as he's always been. Atomic is hanging on to his spot purely on reputation at this point. Zedrier and Taco are entering their primes, leaving 1 interchangeable spot for Pumpkin and Raj. Raj is a player who will eventually go on to have one of the greatest carry jobs in Destiny speedrunning history when he almost single-handedly breaks a 14-minute barrier on Rat the Machine about a month from now. But for now, he's just the 7th best Kingsfall player on Xbox, and as such, competes for a spot with Pump. Pumpkin would take over for Taco and Twooziee on Hunter, and has the unfortunate reputation of being one of the hardest Destiny chokers ever. It's harsh, but a fair thing to say that he simply just plays down to the moment. Many people who have played with him, myself included, can attest to runs that were orbited because Pump couldn't power slide, missed a celestial stagger, or bricked park glitch. His workarounds for these were fascinating too. He was struggling to do the most basic form of power sliding, so he instead tried to learn how to do a bellicose slide without fast load speeds. It's one of the most incredible feats that literally nobody talks about. People have seen the Zero Sword bellicose, and some have seen Praeted's 7 Sword power slide, something that to this day he is the only one to complete. I think that's enough tangent for now, particularly because of a minor strat development that came at Relics. Following a callout sheet made by Taco demonstrates relic spawns aren't entirely random. The initial relic spawn is random, but memorizing what happens after seeing the first relic spawn, we can predict where the second spawn is going to be. From that, we are able to pop our supers slightly earlier and cut the total relics time down a couple of seconds. With those additions and a short break, Taco takes from Destiny, this record period was uneventful, yet still takes us on the cusp of another minute barrier break, which is where I personally think things get far more interesting. So let us carry on. The 23-minute barrier is officially behind us, and it's been both a controversial barrier that we have been traversing, yet ended on such an incredibly subtle note. The most noteworthy part of this new record was a successful hit of a Gerwin slide, at least the double bellicose version of one. This is the tech that Gerwin tried unsuccessfully to execute back in PlayStation's 2319, and was performed as the new fastest completion of ships. Now, this happened back in the 2307, but that record bunch is so much nothing in the grand scheme of things, and this record really is too. Again, this is a videoless record, so you're gonna have to take my word on it. Camhammer is here on Xbox, making him the third PS record holder to have 2 King's Fall records after Crabsy and Gerwin. Look, we wish that we could just skip to a month from now when runs become exceptionally better in quality and frequency of having video. We are doing our best on making a completionist version of Sermia and I's favorite raid, but could we see another milestone that comes with footage? There we go. Relics is just under 2 minutes, which isn't exactly the peak for 2-part Relics, but definitely good enough to keep pace with current strats. This is a record containing not 1, but 2 successful Gerwin slides from Rear and Twooziee, and behind them were successful slides, so they both went ahead for a great ship section. Totems has nothing new, it's still the orb gen for platform, though now only Rear is doing it, instead of both sides having a player on orb gen. Interesting that the team would have Taco as a hunter be the 2-man side, instead of having the safer option of 2 Titans do the low man. But one of Taco's titles in King's Fall is the fastest hunter, so who am I to argue? The enemies took a while to come out of left door for Rear to reset his aura timer, but luckily the damage that the others were doing were enough to still have it as a good kill. After good transition, delayed with a synth pop from Rear, he is, Rear, why are you walking towards the door? You won't be able to kill yourself for about a half second, so getting there as soon as possible is key to this. Anyway, Daughter's runs were okay, but again made up by excellent kill times. Oryx sees a new strat development for the first time since we began using Hunter Celestial for Shades back in the 2530 time. It first appeared in the previous world record thanks to discoveries on PlayStation, and it's something that we definitely should have figured out sooner, because, well, it's just a core function of the raid that we learned. If you kill the knights that spawn on plates during the mortars phase, the mortars phase ends. Yep, that's it. Not a glitch, that is a function of the raid present from day one. I'm speaking as a collective group of people sent out to find new strats for King's Fall here, we have been searching for ways to speed up Daughters and Oryx for years. As of the recording of this, Oryx will only gain about 15 more seconds of save, and Daughters' plays as it was from the world's first completion. We haven't found anything for it. Sermia will talk a bit more on this in the section of what's left to find, but really all of King's Fall's problems come down to this goddamn room. Threshold contains both by far the longest single encounter of any raid, and by far the encounter that we have found the least to do with as of 2024. Even Totems, which has been a long encounter itself, has other things that we can do to occupy the dead time. Not with orcs though, where all 6 players have important jobs to do that they cannot stray too far from. Though something in this category has appeared at Relics, the first part of someone collecting orbs falls into the collection of encounters that have people just standing around looking pretty. We can try to think of something for that player to do. The next strategy is often cited as the greatest strategy development across all the raids in the game. This strat surpasses 4-2 in Wrath of the Machine. This strat is a larger time save than Abyss Skip, Overwall, Cav Slide, Irwin Slide. None of them will compare to this strategy in its genius and time save for a speedrun. Most strats are a trade-off in how difficult the concept is and how much of a skip it is in the raid. This strat will be an extreme of both. Interdimensional Resurrection Breach, also known as IRB. Your eyes aren't lying to you, though it may seem like this with how much of an improvement we have on our hands. 37 seconds of save from a strategy that saves well over a minute isn't an improvement we would tend to hype up as much, but it's more the details and records to follow, and don't worry, we will get there shortly, especially since this record does not have a video, which itself will become much less of a problem in the near future. But enough deliberation. What the hell is IRB, and how does one do it? Well, let's see. From spawn, the player doing IRB takes the initial relic along with the person doing an updated version of Orb Gen, where they don't have to take down as many mid doors and help left side instead of right. After picking up enough orbs to be about 2/3 of the way to their Sunbreaker Super, he turns around and heads off. Back near the initial spawn, he breaches left and heads further back. After getting the Trenchway load zone and breaching out, it's off to the races. Touching the ground in this area for even a quarter of a second will result in a misplaced spawn point for what we are trying to accomplish here. He continues to skate into the back corner of the area, where he then kills himself with a rocket. Respawning back in the breach near the Hall of Souls, he now skates back inbounds, where the rest of the team have been going through relics, issue-free, 5-man, and are now park glitching 4th relic on both sides due to how fast orbs are needed for the IRB player, and to help deal with losses from having one less player the majority of the time. The person doing IRB then park glitches the last relic on left side, and we are now halfway done. After picking up the orbs from the Orb Gen player's Portal Slam and going through is all but one player. After a pendulum skate, the player veers to the left instead of the right, where he offsets by partially breaching in place and swords into the corner, killing them instantly. This teleports them to the very top, not of the area they are currently, but the area at the end of the ships. Shortly after, the player outside the portal kills themselves, and an automatic revive happens to the IRB runner, and from there, they slide down and complete ships just after their timers have gotten to 3 minutes. This strat is nothing short of a legendary discovery from Celestial, one of the greatest glitchers not only of his generation, but of all time. Who, you might ask, is the first to complete this legendary King's Fall speedrun strat, you ask? Who the hell do you think? Par for the course from our friend Taco, who, if he hadn't already in the minds of current runners, certainly now establishes himself as second to none. This strat does more than just save absurd amounts of time as well. It's far easier to complete than a Gerwin slide, and actually raise the ceiling of how fast relics can be done. 4-part speed things up more and will lower our theoretical limit. Oh, silly me, I forgot to update this again. Yes, this will be a new era of Destiny coming up.